The Alberni Valley has been known as an industrial community for a long time. But did you know that we actually built vehicles here? I'm here at the Industrial Heritage Museum. Let's go in and we'll take a look. I'm sitting here in what's become affectionately known as the paper truck. Of course, it's up here in the Industrial Heritage Museum, and I've got a couple of people who are going to come in and talk about it.
I was working at Alberni Engineering when all this came about. The type of tractor that they were using prior to this was a company by the name of Willock Tractors, and they had gone out of business, and the pulp mill had decided that they needed a new fleet, so they came to us with a list of requirements. Things like they would like a diesel powered, the old ones were gasoline powered, and this, which looks like a muffler, is actually a catalytic converter to allow it to run inside a warehouse. And the tractor required a very tight turning radius, so the front ends are out of forklifts. You'll see the extra heavy plate on the back for extra traction. So.
Yes, I noticed those fenders are pretty much what, 2-inch or 3-inch solid steel?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they must be quite a thing to bend.
Actually, they were bent in Vancouver by Burrard Dry Dock. Mm-hmm. And we contracted them to do that. Okay. There's 4 of these built, and one of them actually it's filled with lead shot instead of the steel. It was an effort to try to change the pricing, but I think this ended up being the cheaper way to go.
And from conception to delivery, how long does that take roughly?
It was a while ago. I mean, the original design I think took probably 6-8 months, but then once they were drawn, it would have probably been 4 months to build one from start to finish.
Okay. And when did they first come into operation?
The early to mid 80s was when these were being designed and built. There's 4 of them in total.
Okay. And then they were built for predominantly hauling paper, wasn't it?
Well, they were the prime mover for I guess it was like a train. There was usually 3 articulated trailers that were, they also had steering mechanism in them so they could maneuver through the warehouse. And that's so, and then they were used later up and down the waterfront in Port Alberni between the pulp mill and I guess it was Terminal 3.
How long were they used for?
I'm not sure when they stopped. I mean, they were also used when we had the paper barges that were used. They would be moored in the Somas River, and then there was a loading dock that they would run them right from the warehouse onto the paper barges, and then they're offloaded there. And then after that, they were also running, but I'm not too sure of the actual year.
You said it's a diesel. What size diesel is that in there?
It's an 8.2 liter General Motor diesel.
Mm-hmm. And it must have a fairly low gear reduction.
Yeah, they're planetary rear ends. They were actually a surplus bought out of a Skagit crane company out of Washington State, and they had like 4 of them, and that was one of the components that the tractor was built around.
So it must be quite the thing trying to find the various pieces and then build around them. It must take quite a bit of design to bring it all together and, well, make something like this and make it work good.
Yeah, it was like a lot of the tradesmen on the floor were quite talented in that way. I mean, there was a certain amount of conceptual drawings, but the fellows on the floor did a lot of the fine detail to make it all happen.
So what does it take when somebody comes down with a design and presents it to you and says, we need this built?
Well, generally we look at it and decide whether the drafting office upstairs or the engineers really know what they're talking about sometimes, because we're the machinists downstairs who actually machine the parts. But in this case, this went together pretty well.
What were some of the parts that you had to actually machine?
Oh, we had to fit
custom.
all the parts, all the main axles together, and bolt those together. They were generally already manufactured, and it was a case of putting it together. But a lot of the parts didn't fit sometimes quite, and we had to machine spacers, new leaves, and joining parts there. And a lot of the parts in there weren't available on the general just to buy. Certain things like the doors that were manufactured there at Alberni Engineering, and other parts like that just generally weren't available for a job like this, especially the bumpers and things like this. We machined the radiuses to fit them all together, the things.
That takes quite a bit of work.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, you must have quite a crew to...
Well, there were about half a dozen. We're getting a bit old now, some of them aren't all around us, but to do this, then this was a special job sort of thing, because we were mainly in the boat manufacturing business and repair side. So when this job came along, this was quite a challenge at times.
But you must be quite proud to have something like this come off the assembly line.
Oh yeah, when we look back at what we've built there and many of the other projects that we've been through now, it's quite something to look back at.
What about, because especially when you're designing from, as Paul had mentioned, you have a rear end from one vehicle, a front end from something else, and trying to make it all go together.
Oh, well, often in that case it didn't ever match together. A GM transmission, GM engine didn't always match to an Allison transmission. So there were spacers and rings and to attach it together. Most of it did go together, but occasionally there were always problems like that we came across.
Oh, I'm sure there would be, yeah. But you guys overcame them.
We overcame them there. We had a good team of people down there, and there still are down there as well that did all this work there. Oh. It's a rather a specialist type of job, being a one-off or two-off. In this case, there were several made.
How long did you actually work on this project?
On this project, it was on and off 3 or 4 months each one. I can't fully remember all of them now. This is going back in time, but around that.
Okay, and you had them all finished by?
Oh, in the late 80s, I think it was there.
So what's it like to see one of your projects now becoming a history of the valley?
Oh, it's quite something when you look back at the whole array of trucks and vehicles that we've got here now. Yeah, it's quite a lot of history that goes into this now.
And I bet you're probably proud to know that it was built here in the valley.
Oh, definitely. And there's many other projects we built down there that were quite special there to this part of the logging and boating industry as well.
Have you ever seen something and then with a few pictures and ideas decide you have to build it? Well, that's how this thing started. It all started when Ernie Shorter was down in California during the war years and had seen some forklifts working in California. He realized what an important part this could play in our valley. So with a few catalogs and some good ideas, he brought them back. With the help of Oscar Weeble and a few other people, it was actually built here, basically out of scrap metal and parts. And in 1946, it's starting to work. Men like Oscar, Ernie, and Lauren Jordan recognized the importance of a vehicle like this in moving lumber. And from 1946 until 1965, it did move a lot of lumber. It was finally sold as scrap, but that didn't last too long. It was quickly bought up by the Southern Company, and they used it for quite some time, until finally it found its final resting home here. This particular forklift is considered the first forklift ever to be built in the valley. And this is a very good example of what can be done when people have an idea. Another thing that was actually built in the valley is this here Challenger truck. But this is not just what we build. We don't just build models here. We build the real thing.
I design them. I have a partner, Eric Netzer, and we together own the company. And we've been together 43 years, I think.
Okay. What brought you to designing your own vehicle? You
Well,
said you were a logging truck driver. Why
That's
design
right,
your own
and
truck?
Having worked for all small contractors, never a big company as far as driving logging truck, you fixed them on the weekend. You quickly learned to, and you learned driving all three brands that were around, you quickly learned the weak points in them all. You see, and when you'd be fixing, you'd say, well, gee, you know, if they do it this way, we wouldn't be fixing it today. So those things are piling up. And finally, you know, many years later, 1987, and I started driving logging trucks in 58. So I've been at it a while, and just what 20 years? And you have all these ideas in your head, you see. So finally, that's what drove me. And I always liked the idea and wore people out telling them someday I'd design and build my own brand. Eh? You just get up on here and you undo the 4 latches, which you'd have on any truck. Okay. And then you just reach back here, hopefully. Eh?
Now you have.
Yeah.
What sort of different innovations did you bring about?
First of all, I make them tough so that you don't have to fix them very often. And that's proven out over the years. And then the next thing you do is you make them easy to work on. So in other words, if the engine breaks down out on the road 20 miles from the shop, which it often does, with the other trucks, you have to bring down a log loader from up in the mountain, 20 miles maybe, unload that truck because you can't tow it with 100, 150 ton on, and then you tow it in the shop with another truck. Well, that took a whole day just to do that. Now we've got it in the shop, now we can take out the engine. So I made it so the engine slides out like a drawer very quickly, and all you do is take a budget rent-a-truck out there, a 2-ton with a high-ab crane on the back, and you take off the front bumper, comes with the grill guard and the 2 fenders, you throw them in the ditch, and then you swing around again with your high-ab crane, you grab the engine, it slides out on an inner frame. Right out of the truck with the radiator still attached, the antifreeze still in it, the transmission on it if it's a standard transmission, and then you head to Nanaimo to the dealer to get it fixed. And then you take it back out there with the same budget truck and slide it back in and put on the bumper again, and you're on your way. You just saved a day of having to unload it, tow it into the shop to take the motor out, and then a much bigger job to take the motor out.
It's a long way down.
Yeah, it is. I noticed that.
And I'll put the steering wheel down so that you can see the dash. And then I'll get out of here. Here, like that. So now you can see how easy it is to fix wiring and all that kind of stuff.
But of course, we're like Kenworth and the rest of them. We don't build motors, axles, stuff like that. We build the frame, the cab, and design all that. Yeah. So
When did you first design the Challenger?
in '86, yeah. Went to Vancouver, bought a drafting table, and came home and sat up there all by myself in a little office. And was scared to build the first frame, so I took my plans to a big outfit in Annacis Island and had them build me the first frame from my plans. And eventually we couldn't get close enough tolerances. I wanted things straight and right. And we never get that. We went 3 different outfits in Vancouver, and finally after about 6 trucks, we started doing it ourselves, and we got them right. I've had some very good local welders. John Kreutz has been my head welder for the last, I don't know, 20-some years, and he's a local boy, born and raised out in Beaver Creek. And
Well, there is definitely a lot of talent here in the valley. And
there is.
A lot of skills and
Well,
innovation.
the cabs were made at a place called Stevens Sheet Metal in town here, which is gone now. It's gone now. Port Machine did all our milling because we never got enough business to own our own milling machines and lathes, stuff like that. So Port Machine did all that. Another excellent outfit.
How long does it take, say, to build a frame and cab assembly?
We can build a truck from flat steel along with Stephen Sheet Metal building the cabs and that. And we can build a truck from the order, once we get the order, 3 months. I didn't even want to waste all the time in the world designing them until I got the order, because I was bidding against Kenworth. And anyway, when I finally got the order, then I had to finish designing them, and it took us 5.5 months to build the 2 side by side, just as you see them here.
That's actually a pretty good time, right?
It is, yeah. They were $1 million a piece. Today they're $2 million a piece, because they're 24 years has gone by, and that's how much things have gone up. They really have. Steel has doubled to tripled in that time. Tires have doubled, and engines and transmission, all that stuff has doubled. So I'm sure that they'd be, if I costed them out $2 million a piece today. Yeah.
I was just looking at the tires before I talked to you, and I said, oh, I'd hope I never had to change a tire on this thing.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I hear there's one in South America, isn't there?
Yeah, Tasmania, one in the oil fields, and Australia, there was one there pulling 300-ton trailers behind it. Yeah, and then Guatemala, there's a couple in Guatemala, and there's 5 up in the tar sands, Fort McMurray. Oh, wow. Yeah, pulling big low bed trailers, hauling big equipment around in the pits. Way too heavy to go on the road. When I was building these things, we were just about ready to go, and I was going to get a permit to take them down Falls Road here, over to Sprout Lake Division, just across the bridge, Mission Road, and get on the logging road, you see, to road test them for a week and fix every last little thing. Then you call the low beds to take them from there. So anyway, when the day comes, I go down and I buy the biggest permit. Then I go and find the biggest wrecking truck, car wrecker, you know, tandem axle one. And I back them up here, I bring them out here, and I said, now back up and hook onto the front bumper here and take what you can, which would be relieving the weight, you see. He could probably take half of it. So anyway, who's arguing? So I says, I'll drive the big truck, you drive your wrecker. We had a couple of pilot cars to get around the bridge down there. And we got to Mission Road, came back and got the second one, and the game was up. Then, of course, we called the low beds. H.A. Davis from Ladysmith came up with his best low beds to take them, and they got the first one over to the scales while we were loading the second one. The first truck left and got to Parksville Scales, and he phoned back and he said, oh, that didn't work. He said, we're overloaded. So take the tires, because we have to take the outside dual wheels off because it's too wide. And we piled them on the bare frame behind, you see. And so anyway, he said, we got to take them off there and put them ahead of the truck on what we call the gooseneck where the highway truck hooks in. Yeah, and there's a platform there. And he said, put them up there, it should work. So luckily he caught us in the second truck, we did that. And I guess everything went, because they took them over to Langley, dumped them off again, because we didn't have the room here at the time we were building the trucks. We need one bay to weld in, you see. So we couldn't build the boxes. We didn't have the room. So we contracted it out to Aspen Trailer in Langley. They put the boxes on, they were ready to go, and tried them out, took them off again. We put them on a B train, and the 2 low beds went over again, and loaded up the 2 trucks, and I got out in front with my pickup and piloted the whole convoy up to Sparwood, which took us just over a day.
That would have been quite an exciting.
Oh, it was quite a trip, but it all went quite well. And we had to take the old number 3 highway through a Soyuz and trail and all that, because we're too big to go through the tunnels up at on the number 1.
Over the years, how many have you built?
Only 14, because the market was failing for these big trucks. They've all gone to highway trucks out in the bush, well, to a great extent anyway. And so, like if you go to Franklin River today, you'll probably find 15 down there, of big, they're all 40, 50 years old, because they do live a long time, all of them. You know, there's only one thing you can be sure of in life, and that is change. So you can't be sure of anything, can you?
Oh, for sure. How wide is this vehicle?
Oh, I can't even remember offhand.
Wider than most vehicles.
Yeah, 12.5 feet or so, and a highway truck is 8.5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, at least 12.
it's a little wider than the average.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the boxes that go on these are 12.5 feet wide. I remember that, yeah. So these are right around 12.5 feet wide, yeah. These haul 100 ton, and you could have 100 ton on a trailer, so 200 ton.
And the engines, you said you don't build the engines. Where do you get the engine supply and transmission?
It's your choice. If you're ordering a truck here or Kenworth or anywhere else, you have your own ideas on what you want for an engine. Transmissions, do you want standard transmission? Do you want power shift transmission, automatic transmission? Axles, you have a choice of axles. So you come to me usually as a trucker and you say, I want a V12 Jimmy, or this is an 8V149 Detroit diesel. And so you just come and tell us, and we're happy to put in whatever you want. We order OEM from the factories, whatever you have decided on, you see.
Oh, okay.
So that's it's a custom built truck, and they all were. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just slip them on, and you can slip the power train on that frame that you
Yes,
built, and
that's
if
right.
there's a problem.
It's always a bit of engineering involved because the motor mounts are in a different place, the engines are totally different, transmissions, everything. But it's not a big deal, you know. I love the designing of it. Yeah, and I never finished high school. But you know what? The reason I never finished high school was they weren't teaching me a damn thing about a truck.
There you go.
See, if they'd been teaching me about trucks, I'd have been, you know,
still be
right there. Yeah.
We've been down here at the Industrial Heritage Museum, and we've managed to talk about a few different vehicles here. But of course, we've only had time just to give a brief story on each of them. Time just doesn't allow us to get in any deeper. So those of you who would like to know more, feel free to drop down, take a look. People here will certainly tell you a lot more than what I can. And also, for those of you who'd like to volunteer, come in and maybe work on something like this. And I'm Gerald Lemieux, your friendly neighborhood time traveler. And I'll see you next time, whenever in time that may be.